Welcome everybody to Town Hall 58. It is Wednesday, May 12th, 2021. And here with me, and today we don't have a guest. We have Mike and I.
Oh my gosh.
That's
We're all
okay,
by ourselves.
We can be our own guest. Our own guest. So my name's John Best. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Best Innovation Group. You can check us out at big-fintech.com. And with me, just pounding down his moonshine.
That's right.
Is Mike Lawson, creator, host of CU Broadcast.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here.
Welcome. No, it's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
I want to do the
that's Kirk's thing. Yeah.
I know, but I want to do the sponsors first. So let's back up before we do that. So let's just real quickly talk about our sponsors. CUNA, I actually am just getting ready to do a CUNA Council thing coming up for I think it's the finance group. I'm very excited about that.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Just had a meeting last night. Fantastic. They really got that tech down. They're doing a great job of it. So speaking on crypto, I'm also mediating. I guess it's not mediating. I guess facilitating is a better word, because mediating makes it sound like they're fighting amongst each other. But a really fantastic group with a whole bunch of different people from the different disciplines. Brandon Smith out of Wyoming, Reliant, Willis Chang, Connecta, a couple other credit unions, and everybody's kind of from a different one of the councils to get their perspective on kind of what the new normal is, what do budgets look like, what's the most important thing. So I'm literally looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a fantastic meeting. Correlation.
You know when that is?
What's that?
Do you know the date that is? Because I'd love to check that out too. Or you can go to the CUNA Council website.
Finance one. Melissa can put it into the chat. I'm sure.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Just shortly. I live in this hole here in the basement, and dates don't really mean much to me. I don't even know if it's day or night. I just stay here. So
one day bridges into the next.
Just finished the CEO CTO Correlation Conference. Got a very nice gift from Correlation for doing that, and it really was great. I mean, I've already had some great meetings with some people out there. Cap Ed, Toby King reached out, learned a lot from what they're doing with Keystone and what they're working on, and we're hoping to work together with them on advancing some of their home banking needs and digital needs, because it's such a flexible system. So congratulations to Correlation for that, and thank you for sponsoring us.
And your presentation was really good too.
What's that? Oh, thank you.
Your presentation was really good
too. I saw you posted it. Thank you.
Loved it. Yeah.
CU Broadcast. And by the way, very good job on the VR. I got a lot of emails from that. By the way, that conference is 5/18, so May 18th.
Okay, May 18th.
I'm doing what are crypto assets, and then later on is the facilitation of the of the group that will be talking about kind of what to expect, say, for 2022. How do you budget for it? What are you doing? So I'll be moderating that council panel of CU execs. That's
a super
interesting. And that's on the next day. That's Wednesday, 5/19. So CU Broadcast, as always, just a long time friend and thankful. And then obviously my company, Big. And we just kind of described what we do. So that's our sponsors. Let's move on and talk about the Spring Fling Fintech Wing.
Spring Fling.
Whatever we're calling this. I don't know. So CU.
Isn't that Kirk Drake's thing?
Chris Odie, they partner with the founders of Money 2020, and they're going to do a fintech spring meetup. So they're going to have a bunch of fintech vendors there, and it's a free sign up, by the way. So even you and I can afford it, Mike.
Yeah.
It's June 15th to 17th, half days. So you're not like, oh, I got to sit here all day and watch this video. You can do CU host for free entry, and apparently if you decide you want to pay, you can do a CU TVC. I don't know, maybe some people are just feeling a little more generous, I guess. Yeah. There's no keynotes, no speakers. It's just meetings and networking. It's
one-on-one stuff. It's really neat.
Kind of one-on-one, yeah.
Really cool
and that's going to be very cool. I'm looking forward. I'm going to be there for sure.
Me too.
The signups are supposed to be open until May 27th, but they're running out of spots. So if you're going to do this,
get in.
Probably want to do it now.
Yep.
And I'm letting Melissa know, go ahead and sign me up if I haven't already. I'm sure they have, but if they haven't, go ahead and sign me up. So you create a profile, and then you try to decide who you want to talk to and who you want to be with, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yep.
So
you get to pick and choose.
I think that's going to be those kinds of things. They're less about sort of people yakking at you and more about interfacing with everyone else is really important. And it's a great segue into my topic for today.
Alrighty.
So here's my topic, and you are the perfect person to start with, because if there's anybody that has their finger on the literal pulse of the heartbeat of the soul of the veins that are pumping blood throughout the credit union, hands and feet and legs and arms and torso
Well, we
and other
tried.
extremities, it's you. So I believe the only way for credit unions not to dissipate down to, I don't know, less than 1,000 in the next 5 years is for them to hyper collaborate. I'm going to use that word.
Okay.
Hyper collaboration. So let's talk about hyper collaboration. I'm going to describe what I've seen as collaboration. I've seen some really incredible collaboration, but I feel like they were from generations past. So the generations that built the PSCUs, the co-ops, that leadership by and large is retired.
Mm-hmm.
So, but those were in response to the problems of the day, which were very major. Credit unions couldn't participate in credit card programs. That was limiting them as financial institutions, more importantly, limiting what they could do for their memberships. So with that in mind, it seems like we're headed into a new path of that, but it feels like most of the collaboration is a lot of talk. And then once it gets down to the nuts and bolts of actually doing something, it becomes more difficult because it seems like there's a lot of either disagreement or maybe people, and I'm going to involve a lot of other people in this, so get ready, out there. But I'm going to start with you. So you interview lots of folks, and a lot of what you do, which I love, is you're kind of focused on collaboration. I've noticed that a lot of your guests are usually involved in QSOs. We've seen some QSOs spring up, some good ones.
Big fan. Mm-hmm.
But I'm still not, this hyper collaboration, and the word hyper is important to me because it can't wait. Now, I'll give you a couple examples of things that I think require hyper collaboration to survive. Analytics, I've said that all along, and hats off to Doug at Ox for trying to deliver that. Crypto is going to be something that it's already real. Mm-hmm. We have to accept that. It's no longer a fad, and it's going to require hyper collaboration across the industry.
Completely.
I think both of those are issues. I think upcoming population collapse and new lending assets and those kinds of things, particularly as it relates to secure fees, and we've done that before in mortgages, but it's going to require hyper collaboration. Mm-hmm. And the final one is, I want to say, well, two more: operations and services. We're all going to have to get over that. Maybe we all don't need our own call center. We all don't need our own accounting. That's going to have to be figured out. And then finally, digital. I don't know if it's regional pockets, but everybody's sort of buying third-party products that are all kind of the same and not collaborating on what are the table stake needs for the credit union industry, as well as sharing resources to build the niche needs of the industry are important. So my question to you is, what have you seen? What have you seen that fits that role? Are you seeing the same thing? Am I wrong? Am I off base? Do you have stories that refute what I'm saying?
No, I hear a lot
of Doug next. I'm gonna let Doug Burke speak next.
Yeah, he'll probably know way more than me, but what I hear is a lot of talk as well. I hear, obviously, the last 12 to 14 months, there was a lot of collaboration. And gosh, how is your remote, how are you handling your remote employees, your staff? How are you handling that? And people were clamoring for that type of information. And
but that was kind of like right now. That's like we have a problem in the moment, and I do think we do. That's my whole credit union story. I think if you're doing a big implementation, like if you're switching out your core, your credit cards, there's no one you'd rather have in your foxhole than your credit union family. Those guys are the best. However, when it comes to the more longer term, esoteric type things, we tend to be more reactive than proactive. Because of
I mean, I remember my marketing days at Scimitar, and we were in charge of the client. At that time, Scimitar's getting a lot of echoing here, but
I think
Scimitar's
he's preparing to speak.
Their biggest sales asset was their client list, And what the sales guys would, or sales people would do, is they would send out the entire client list at that time. This is back in the 90s. And they would send out their entire client list to the prospect and say, call any of these people, any of these credit unions, and ask them about us and our services and our technology. And I found that
statement.
What's that?
That's a strong statement.
Huge. And they had never, at that time, they had never lost a credit union to any for any reason at all. So, and again, this is back in the 90s when I was there. I was the marketing person there. And me coming into the credit union industry as a newbie at that time, I was flabbergasted that they would do something like this. I mean, are you kidding me? You send the entire client list. I mean, this was, well over 100, knocking on the door of 200 credit unions at the time. So I just thought that was phenomenal about that type of collaboration, that they had the faith in their clientele to give them a good word, no matter who it was. It didn't matter if it was a $50 million shop or, a $750 million shop. So it was I just found that incredibly fascinating, and what an asset to have. And that was my first taste of credit union collaboration, that there was this tremendous openness to pass on the word. And I've always said that ever since. And some of our biggest or most viewed episodes on our site are credit union like success stories or case studies, when a company will bring on a credit union and the credit union will talk about, hey, here's our problem, here's our solution, and then here's our results. And those blow up. Those are our highest. So I can see who's watching, and credit unions are watching this. And so that again is another form of collaboration. So I just see that it's there, but I'm not sure about what you term the hyper collaboration and how we are addressing the issues that we're facing today coming out of the pandemic. So I know it was there. It was there the last 12 to 14 months in certain instances, but right. What we need to do to solidify our future is still in question.
I agree. So let's flip over to Doug. Doug immediately responds, I agree with you, John. I know he's got something to say on this. And obviously, as someone who runs a collaborative organization and has a very successful one for a long time. Go ahead, Doug. Doug, introduce yourself for those that may not know who you are.
Sure. My name's Doug Burke. I'm the CEO of actually a couple QSOs. One is Ox, formerly known as CU Service Network. And then we spun off our shared branching book of business into a new QSO called In Network. And as John said, we've been around now for just shy of 30 years, and everything was very much based on collaboration. Our primary service when we started in 1992 was share branching. And I would, go back to what John said about co-op, PSCU. I think, shared branching is probably one of those pillar types of services that requires an extreme level of collaboration and cooperation. And, it's only succeeding today because of that continued collaboration. Now, granted, COVID's had an impact and with that collaboration over the last year or so, but, I look at it, there's probably, I divide it up into three areas. I look at there's like income generating collaboration, the Cuddles of the world, and mortgage servicing, things of that nature. There's more back office oriented services, some of the things we do like accounting or data analytics. And then there's other services, I would say like a member pass, that are more utility oriented, in terms of it's like with member pass being a digital ID, do we all have to have our own version of something? No, I mean, there can only be so many flavors of that. So, whatever it is, I think people need to get behind something, but together to move it forward for everybody's ability and not divide the market. If we're not careful in some areas, we end up with back to the old days with, is it beta or VHS?
Yeah.
You start dividing the market a little bit, and frankly, it doesn't matter. They're both probably good. You need to pick one, and we all need to get on board some of those.
Yeah, and even if it's the wrong one, the power of numbers will allow you to migrate to the right one in a much more effective and cost efficient manner.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, you can always make a mass migration to something new later on. But, and then like I said, we're in a number of back office services, and, one of those being compliance. Credit unions don't go around saying, we have the best compliance services out there, you got to check it out. No, they're like, hey, we got to do the minimum that the government allows, the examiners like. And so you got to find a method to do it in the most cost-effective manner, so there's different metrics and different ways to evaluate the different services. So I think those are types of services where people come together and, get something out there to frankly check the boxes that need to be checked, as compared to, auto lending where, you're taking it to the masses. So I think there's just different, groupings, if you will, of the levels of collaboration.
So that's exactly where I was going. And so let me add a little bit to that and see if you agree, if I'm picking up what you're putting down. So there's the collaboration that's like a cuddle, and that's a great example. Incredible collaboration out of Golden One. Tony, just a great communicator and personable, and that's what it takes, to kind of drive that. But that's very much a commodity platform. And sure, it grew because there was resource put towards it. So, enough credit unions put in, create the QSO, and off it went. Then there's this next level of collaboration, which I'm going to say is more regional. It's, for instance, Jim Yates, who's in Wyoming, and Y-High Credit Union, or one of the other credit unions, that there are things that are in Wyoming that, while they wouldn't necessarily concern you, Doug, but they certainly would be advantageous for all of those. I'll use any place here in Colorado, wherever, all of those credit unions to sort of get together and do something. And so I've asked that question of a couple of people. I said, hey, I remember when you guys were talking about doing X, because sometimes they'll contact me and go, hey, we're having a conversation about this. Can we all talk? And I'll hop on. And then later on, I'll go, hey, whatever happened to that? And where I found it was falling down was that for that more next level sort of one down, which, by the way, has the power to be just as powerful as the bigger ones, I think. It was all about sort of resource. It was back to that, well, it felt like we were going to have to put in a lot of work. And so I wonder, Doug, and maybe I'll throw this at Jim as well, just because he's on here and I haven't tortured him lately. But I wonder, should there be resource inside the credit union that is dedicated to collaboration? It's sort of like innovation, right? I mean, that's, if you ask people why innovation is struggling inside credit unions, it's because it's no one's day job. But it's also no one's day job to directly collaborate, is it?
No, I think you're right on that. And I think it comes from the top down, and it's the mindset. I think we've all encountered various credit unions where, go unnamed, they are extremely independent and they just will not collaborate with anybody. And it frankly starts with the CEO. And then there's been other credit unions, regardless of size. There's some billion-dollar credit unions and some smaller ones where they're all about collaboration. Let's work together. We'll share. I mean, that's kind of the credit union way. It's like, hey, I've got some. I'll be glad to share with you. I don't have a problem with that. So it starts at the top level. But yeah, I would say once we step down from there, it's just simply adopting a philosophy of collaboration. Sometimes I think people forget about some of those types of opportunities, and when they're doing vendor searches and other things along those lines, they go through the traditional checklist, but they don't kind of think out of the box or sometimes support the existing QSOs. There's QSOs all over the country, and if we could support them more, we're kind of supporting our own industry more rather than supporting the Fiservs of the world and people like that.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not necessarily saying you wouldn't have the Pfizer's or whatever involved. It's
No,
just,
not at all.
it seems like there's these regional needs that would, and to me, that's where we win. That's where we differentiate ourselves from the banks is, okay, because why, I'm going to go back to Wyoming, but why, because Wyoming is unique in that it's rural, it's more rural, less urban. The needs there are a little different. Digital's a little different. Everything's a little different. It seems to me that those are common bonds between the organizations there. Whereas Colorado, you could argue, has even a separate set of issues that could be addressed by. And I know that's kind of what the corporates and the leagues were kind of pulled together to do. And I think that they do a good job of sort of like getting everybody together, but the execution, I guess that's what I'm talking about, the hyper portion of it. The execution's an issue. I'm going to throw it over to Jim real fast. Jim, do you mind speaking? You can just say no if you don't want to.
No, that's fine. My one thought is that, some of the lack of collaboration in recent years is partially a function of that there are fewer of us and we view each other as competition more than we used to in the past. Where I had my SEG, you had your SEG, it was easier to collaborate because we weren't going after the same members. Now that we're all community or regional or national, there's more competition. So I think, credit unions want to have that extra one up, even if it's one up on other credit unions.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I do see that a lot. It seems like everybody suddenly has a charter for their entire state, or that does seem like that's a common thing that we're seeing. I wonder if the regulators sort of realize that they're creating that dissension between the organizations. But it's a great point. But I mean, I guess I would argue, though, I have seen organizations with that member overlap, the SEG overlap, if you will, in Florida. Where I know that, for when I was at Suncoast, Tom Doherty and Bucky Sebastian and Bob from Grow, what was McDill, they would collaborate on things, and some of the biggest things were charities for the community, which I thought was fantastic, and some of the other things were services like the one of the big ones was the ATM network, the CU24, Presto, and what happened through there, where they realized the volume together was important. So I'm going to throw another topic out there. So, okay, so we all agree that collaboration is good. It's necessary for us to survive, and that there are hurdles. We also agree that there are different levels of it. There's the QSO model, and the reason I think the QSO model works is because the credit unions are willing to put money at it, which creates that resource that's dedicated to it. That's why that works. But not everything can be a QSO. Crypto is going to maybe struggle to be a QSO, I guess. I don't know. We'll see, because there's a lot of regulatory around it. But that aside, whatever it is, I would also argue, Mike Lawson, if that is your real name, that the technology we have today is more geared for collaboration than it ever was. That there's more things not just baked into all of our solutions, but there are more things out there to enable us to collaborate than we've ever had, in the last, I would say since about 2018, the collaborative platforms that have evolved over that time, Slack, Zoom, the APIs, how they've been adjusted, the lower level technologies. And so with that in mind, I see that we have, I believe his name's Jeff Dent, or as other people know, Prisoner 869.
I was just look at correlation. Look at what they do,
Right. But I want to ask Jeff, am I right there? Is the world sort of, when you design, do you design with a collaborative approach from a multi-institutional standpoint?
Well, when we design our application, we want information to be accessible. And I think that's what we're talking about, right? And we're a transaction processing system. So it would be hard to consolidate on a single system like that. But at the same time, we make sure that everything's accessible through either our API or through third-party tools or connectors, standard SQL connectors and whatnot to extract that information. Because I think what we're talking about is doing trending, doing things like analysis over time and
Well,
understanding
AI
our
is a
members.
great example.
Yeah, AI,
is very common.
machine learning. And so we built a system in a
Jeff,
way that
yeah,
all
no,
that
and
information can be extracted.
right. Your system is open. There's no doubt about it. But let's take that hat off. You're one of the best technologists I know. Let's just talk about what you and I know, and then try not to get too techie for everybody. But the things that have evolved, JSON, like
Yeah,
the underlying.
I think it's important to understand who you're dealing with. At the end of the day, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so what I'm saying is, would you agree with me that the tools, the underlying tools, it's like you used to have to paint the house with a brush, and you had to kill a horse to get enough hair to do it. That was back, in when Gary Coates was young. But now that, now we have sprayers that could just, do this wall in 2 seconds, and we have all these tools, and we've created jigs and all of these different things to enable efficiency. I would say, from my perspective, from a technologist perspective, including things like blockchain and the evolution of that, the consensus, the underlying communication protocols, the security that's been built in around them, that we've never been, and this is why you built your system the way you did, that we've never been in a better position from a technical standpoint to collaborate than we've ever had. Like shared branching was a feat back then. I mean, an absolute feat.
Absolutely.
That was like somebody's pure will. Today, that would be trivial, would it not?
Yeah, the numbers that you have to crunch to be able to consolidate this information would not have been able to happen 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. The amount of information that we can consolidate and bring together and via a unified message for the rest of the masses, that's huge. That's huge today.
Yeah.
Well, and look at Correlation's clientele. That is an uber ultra collaborative group of credit unions. They're very progressive credit unions, especially early on, when these folks they want to move and shake things up. And this group at Correlation is an incredible savvy group, and they're very collaborative, and it just makes, and when they collaborate, it just makes the Correlation product technology better. So that's a great example of technology collaboration, where these guys are just continuing to push that proverbial envelope just because of who they are. And it's really, and when you get these people together, it's really infectious in a good way to listen to these conversations. And Jeff is, obviously well aware of that. It's really exciting to see. If you want collaboration, go check out this group of people.
So now we've said, okay, we know QSOs work. We feel like there's another level of collaboration that would be beneficial, but it's hampered by intercompetition. It's hampered by lack of resource, but it's not hampered by technology. So technology is actually an enabler in favor of that, whether it be services or those sorts of things. So that's certainly there if we want it. So I'll go back to my original statement, and then I want to jump over to Kevin Sarber, who is former CEO of a large QSO, my former boss, and still my boss really at the end of the day. And so I want to just I want to reiterate what I think are the important ones of the future. AI is critical. And so when I say analytics, I'm sort of part and parcel saying AI, and I know Doug and his group are seeing that as well. Our whole world is going to depend on how well we implement artificial intelligence. And if our plan is to do it as a Me Too product, oh yeah, we bought blah and that solved it, because that's just not going to work. AI is a far more, and Jeff, I throw this at you, I think you would agree, is a far more, it's far reaching throughout all the products. It can't be implemented as sort of a one thing if you're really going to do it right for long-term and financial.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Exactly. You have to take a stepping stone.
Right.
And then from there,
right.
And then build it over time.
Right. And you have to have a plan or a strategy. You're going to need an AI strategy the same way that you need a digital strategy, and the same way you need an analytics strategy. Would you agree?
Exactly. I agree.
Right. It's not like, oh, well, everybody else has ATMs, I'll get ATMs. It's the difference between purchasing ATMs and having a payment strategy, I think, which we all know was very important.
And
So,
I also think that's going to be not a one fit for everybody also.
yes, right. Which leads me to the regional aspects of it, because there's value in again, sorry, Jim, but all the Wyoming guys, there's actually intrinsic value in understanding that region and the behaviors there and not mixing it in with the overall behaviors of the nation, particularly in being proactive, which is going to be the next level of banking. Right. So step one, find a system that can handle all this, AKA, Jeff Dent's system. That's what I call it, because that's what he told me it was going to be called, the dentilator. I don't know. It turned out to be correlation, but I like dentilator better.
Look at 2022. It might happen.
So Kevin, I know you've got a lot to say about all this. This is a soapbox I've heard you on many, many, many times. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think the successful cooperation models that have been in the industry. You named a couple of them with Co-op and CU Direct and PSCU. Those are success stories, I think, from a time where we had 15,000 credit unions as opposed to the numbers today. And I think the challenge for CUSOs, and I know the challenge for WRG back in, if you go back to 2013, 2014, is you start out with a small number of clients and you're able to do a great job at servicing those clients because you only have a handful of clients.
Right.
When the CUSO crosses that line to, and where Jeff is and where Correlation's done a great job, is as they grow, being able to continue to satisfy, 100 people asking you for things or 200 credit unions asking you for things. And how do you solve those issues? And some of them are things that are needed to remain competitive. Some of them are things that you want that are going to differentiate yourself from another credit union or the big banks. And how do you find those partnerships? I just think it's, there's that small company to big company transition that is still one of the most difficult things to navigate. And I think that's where some of our CUSOs have struggled. And like I said, I know we struggled a bit with that over different times.
Yeah, the competing needs are certainly an issue, and certainly that's something. But Kevin, we and I would lean back to Jeff's statement. So our approach to that problem, as you remember, was to develop the API and the SDK, because we finally realized that if we give people fish, they eat for a day. If we teach them the fish, they stop calling our call center. And it's sort of a lifelong thing. But then once we did that, that was not the solution, because that's like giving them poles and everything, but they got no lake to fish in, or they got no resource to clean the fish or whatever. We thought that was the answer, and it was for some people, but for others, and that's where I'm looking at this hyper collaboration. Like I could see, I'm just going to throw it out there, Jeff, and this is, you and I have talked about this before, and Kevin, you and I have talked about this. What if you threw together 5 credit unions that said, we're going to create a digital development, CUSO, whose sole purpose is we're all on XYZ home banking system, or we're all on this. No, it's not like designed to make money. It's an expense, but it's designed to reduce that expense. And their sole purpose in life is to pump out those particular things. The problem is when you get to a big one, then you wind up with the competitive resources. But if you've got commonalities, like you said, then there's an opportunity for those people to drive that together. And there's an opportunity for reusability that isn't happening in the standard consultant situation. Meaning that if you create something and it's pretty close to what XYZ credit needs, but you made it for ABC, if they're all in on a CUSO or a collaborative environment or something, and they've signed the correct things, a lot like our innovation club, then that piece can be shared, which is a great start, and them not having to start over. It's 85% of the way there. That's the type, but that's where rubber meets the road to get the thing out the door.
Well, and I think it's the numbers too. It's like I say, if you keep that group small and you can gain consensus from that small group, that works. But if you're trying to get consensus from 50 credit unions or 100 credit unions who have different fields of membership, who have different geographic, patterns that their members are using,
different vendors.
Yeah, it's very it's tough as it gets larger, and the SDKs and the APIs and all that stuff give us a huge advantage to move more quickly in those situations. But you still have to get agreement, and if your big guys flex their muscles in those groups, then that thing kind of starts to get chipped away until you're left with something that is smaller because you couldn't gain that consensus on a long-term basis.
And that's why, like, I look at something like MSS, and he's not here to defend himself, but he usually is Tom. Tom and the New Jersey credit unions that formed MSS, because they realized that. They said, look, it's ridiculous for all three of us to have three people doing the same thing. And, one guy could run, one email dude could run 50,000 emails. It doesn't matter whether there's 100 accounts or 50,000 accounts at some point. It's kind of all the same. There's, there's their efficiency there. So I want to flip it over, Kevin. Let's hear from a guy, who was even earlier in on home banking than both of us. One of the original founders of Carillion is on the phone with us. Now I believe I think he's a senior vice president of IT or something at WANA Credit Union out in Oregon. Hey, Gary.
Hey, John. How are you?
So, Gary, give everybody a little background about your Carillion days. Just, I don't know that everybody knows your background to that.
Okay. So I was at First Tech Credit Union back in the late 80s. And Ted Spooner was our CFO and was working with a guy by the name of Steve Alloway on a product called Personal Branch, which was a DOS-based, basically it was a PC that had 9,600 baud modems, a bank of them that connected to the PC, and that PC had serial connections into our host system. Back then it was Summit at First Tech. And we built that product. That was the precursor to what ended up becoming Carillion.
And so along the
That
way,
was before the internet.
Right. And then I remember I worked with you to implement what was probably one of the first, other than First Tech's internet home bankings at Suncoast, where you were still there.
Right.
But I remember that, back then, there was, if that thing showed a balance, did a transfer, and, showed history, it was black magic. I mean,
right.
It might as well have been voodoo, everybody was like, oh my God, it does that. And I can just log in and do it anytime I want. I don't have to stick a disk in my machine. I don't have to have 10 modems. It was a big deal.
Right. And we got clients by doing a demo. We'd get access to their demo system and we'd go on site. Crestar Bank was one of our first clients. And I remember flying out there, and the sales engineer that was with me pulled up the test site, and we did a transfer, and they saw it happen real time. And it was black magic at that time. And we signed them that visit. Right.
And then it got acquired by Fiserv, and you decided to join the family again and came back into the credit union world. And I remember, I've kept it, this has to been, well, like you said, it's been like almost 30 years probably, or somewhere around there, since I was in my 20s. So what have you seen from a collaborative perspective, and what opportunities, having been in a couple credit unions, where do you see the opportunity there?
Like my comment,
knowing the challenges you faced with, I remember calling you and going, I need this. And you knew that, like, haha, John's approval number is only $8. If I tell him it takes 9, I'll buy myself 6 months, because he'll have to has it chiseled in stone, present it as an artifact to the various committees, and eventually give blood and finally get it signed. And by then I'll tell him it's $10 and I'll have to start over. Not to be weird about it, but that's right. I mean, that was not saying that, that's their behavior now, but back then you were focused on growing the number of credit unions, not niche
Right.
playing the certain things that we wanted to get into the platform.
Right. Right. Well, I would say during my time at First Tech back in the late 80s, early 90s, the banks were, like I said in the chat, there was a grassroots effort because the banks were attacking our field of membership from a legislative perspective. And they got success, I think, in the early 2000s, because at First Tech, they had to roll their membership back to Tektronix, which was their original credit union. They were Tektronix Employees Credit Union. They couldn't sign up new members because they had to stick to their original seg group. But then that got reversed, I think, a couple years ago, and they were able to open it back up again. The banks attacking us hasn't gone away, and we need a central issue to rally around, like the grassroots effort back then of the banks that were attacking us, because our survival was at stake.
So
and our
you and I
survival is at
had
stake
this,
again if we don't collaborate.
so it feels like the art of the war, right? So what's better than you fighting your enemies directly is getting your enemies to fight each other.
Right.
But I want to discuss one thing that you and I discussed. It was this wild moment. So Gary, when he was at his previous place, did this incredible report. I remember asking him, I said, Gary, what if we knew where all the money in the credit union went, like where the vast majority of it went? And like he is, Gary, it was off the cuff, off the hand thing that you and I were just discussing over a beer somewhere. And like Gary is, he went back and he did it. And he came back and said, John, you're right. It's American Express. I remember it was the top were all just huge banks for credit cards.
Yep. Chase
Right?
was number one.
So
It still is.
why don't you describe that a little bit? Describe that report.
It's a top merchants, what I call a top merchants report. We didn't have an existing report. And so Jeff, I'm now at WANA and we're a correlation credit union. I want to talk with you about creating the top merchants report for us at WANA because we don't currently have it. What my software engineer looked at all
$9, Gary, costs $9.
We'll talk. We looked at the transaction history, that's on your statement, and it's this long string of data. We had to create a program to pull out the name of the merchant and then be able to put them into buckets. And my software engineer created that process. We created the top merchants report, and I was shocked what it told us because I was thinking, where do our members spend the most money? I'm thinking utility bills, grocery shopping, gas station, all that kind of stuff. That stuff was on the list, but it was way further down. Chase was number one. And that credit union was sending Chase over $1 million a week, actually. And what we did is looked at the data. It's a mixture of loan payments, mortgages, credit cards, and car loans. So those are all products that we provide to our members, loans. That's how we make our money at a credit union. We need to focus on first creating the top merchants report to figure out where the money's going. And then at the member level, have conversations with them to get them to refinance those loans with us. That will help credit unions survive.
Right. And 2 points here. The first one was you said this should be a QSO. So I'll just leave it at that. But here's my second point. This is the question I asked. I had this revelation. I was like, well, Gary, why don't they have the checking accounts? Why don't they have that relationship? Because that's kind of like asking, it seems to me if they wanted them, they would have them. And that's when I kind of came up with this theory that maybe they know that's an expensive relationship. And they know that all the money is in the credit cards. Maybe they're okay with us, because you think if we can perform these reports, they haven't figured out how to report. I see Kevin nodding ahead. I mean, Kevin, what do you think?
I think that's such a good example of the data that we need to be aware of. But then it's also, how do you reach that person on the channel that they're choosing to use? How do I give them a one-button click through to refinance that car loan onto our books, and make it as simple as possible? We've made huge strides, I think, in making some of our processes more streamlined, and I think we need to continue to just push on that as hard as we can. And figure out how to advertise it. It's the chime thing that we've talked about 100 times, where they've taken simple things but advertise them really well and the credit union member doesn't know that they're already getting the advantage of what they're talking about.
But would you agree? Would you agree that Jim Yates and his more rural population in Wyoming is a completely different model of how to get that message out than, say, a bigger credit union in a much more urban spot, somewhere around Mike, like, San Diego Credit Union? That's a whole two different things. And digital marketing is yet another opportunity, a tremendous opportunity for QSO, because we're terrible at it for the most part. And we're catching up, but we're all doing it individually and spending a lot of money. So coming back to that question.
But John, to take that, a little bit further, now that Gary's identified these people that are paying Chase and Wells Fargo and B of A, can he then, run pre-qualification for those accounts and send out, pre-approval where it is truly the one button? I'll take it. I'll save myself $50 a month on my car payment, and boom, it's done.
Did you ever get to that, Gary?
No. What we built the top merchants report, and then we built what we called the hub, which is basically a CRM at the teller line and the MSR. It was a collaboration tool for showing offers. So the pre-screens were loaded in there. So if they were pre-qualified for a secure loan or a credit card, those would pop up as soon as they went into the member's account. That credit union uses Scimitar, so it was within Ephesus. I want to build something similar at Correlation. So again, Jeff, you and I are going to be talking.
Yeah, but so Gary, is it safe to say that the reason you didn't, it seems like what Kevin is describing would have been your end game.
Right.
But there were various things in your way, probably resource.
Correct.
Right? But if you really did the analysis, and I know you did, moving all of those accounts would move the needle more than anything else you can do, because they're already members. What's the hardest thing? Getting new members. It's far more expensive. If you can get the current members to move their services over, then that's your number one play.
Right.
And you
especially
did the hard
loans, because that's how we make money.
But that last inch from I identified them, I know what to offer them, to when and where to offer them, to the streamlined, frictionless process, which, by the way, I just opened a Wells Fargo account yesterday online. And it was fairly impressive. It was probably, and I've got to open one here in a little bit with another credit union in Tennessee. And I'm interested, I'm going to compare notes again, but it was very streamlined. It obviously put a lot of effort in, but Wells Fargo, I guarantee you, has probably close to, I know they have at least 600 people that only work on data analytics. I would imagine from a programming perspective, department by department, it's well over 10,000. That's the kind of resource we don't have. But you know what? You don't need 10,000 if your ship's not the Titanic. And if it is that there was some group that said, okay, we're all correlation people. Let's form a Oregon Meetup correlation Jeff Dent Worshippers Club. And we meet on Saturdays and we talk about things, but it's got to go further than that. You have to sign whatever you need to sign to make sure that you can share the actual code and the information. You have to have the people that can implement, or you have to depend or create an entity that could. That's what I see. I see everybody getting up to the plate, and they're loaded, but no one's hitting it out. And that's what I'm worried about. That's what I think is our biggest concern, is that last inch, that last mile. Seems like we're all winding up and doing the things we need to do to get there, but we can't quite close that last deal.
Right. And another issue
is we try fintechs, we try everything, but we're still struggling to reel it in. Am I wrong?
Another issue is compliance.
Compliance, that's another one too.
Their default answer is no. So that's one of the biggest internal struggles.
But you know what? I'm pretty sure when they, can you imagine? I'll just, okay, Mike, you be, and you and Kevin be the board of my credit union, and I'll be the guy who shows up to pitch this. I'll be Ed Callahan. So I got this idea. I think it would be cool if we connected all the credit unions so that our members could go in their branches and use their stuff. Oh, and by the way, I think I'm going to do it through the ATM network, because we all know how well that's working. What do you guys think? What would audit's first reaction have been to that? and regulation. You're going to let their members see your members. I mean, they would have had all the same objections, yet somehow that happened. And I'll tell you why it happened. Because, and you knew him as well, Gary, guys like Ed Callahan, they didn't take no for an answer.
Yep.
Like,
in addition to Carillion, one of the first projects I worked on when we spun off from First Tech was the CU Access shared branching, which was the shared branching network for Oregon and Washington. And
yeah.
our switch was the exchange up in Seattle, the ATM network. And it was a success. The biggest challenge was there were rules around recruiting another credit union's member. So you could not talk to the member from the credit union perspective of joining your credit union unless they said, hey, can I join your credit union? Then all bets were off. But that was one of the biggest challenges with the shared branching.
Which is why you walked around with those shirts that said, ask me how I join your credit union.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll give you another one.
There were ways around it, and we could technically kick people out of the network if it was found out that they were poaching other credit unions members, because that wasn't the point of the shared branching project. But it was a constant thing that we had to talk about. Like in bigger credit unions, they wanted to be an issuer, but not an acquirer, because they didn't want other members of other credit unions clogging up their branches.
Right. So, but yet still it happened, and it's been valuable.
Right.
So another one. So you three can be the board of Pennsylvania state employees, and I will be my friend Alan Bruner. And I will say, here's a good idea. I got an idea, guys. I would like for people to go online, tell me they have a check, tell me how much it is, and then I'll give them the money right then, and then I'll trust them to just mail it to me, to mail me the check. What do you think about that?
But yet, Alan, what have you had to drink so far today?
and I'd like to call it you fraud. That'll be the name of it.
And I don't know how that got past
you post.
It became UPost. It did. And someone like Kevin, someone like Kevin, had he been in the room, would have probably said, you know, people put in empty envelopes into our ATMs all the time. It's because we're not good at comparing risk, and we're not good at understanding that sometimes that compliance is not the ultimate no, and that we have to work with them. Their job is actually to enable us, for us to find a compliant way. It may end sometimes that we just can't, but sometimes it can. So we're supposed to find ways to do things, not find ways not to do things. Yeah. And that's where I'm going to end this, because I don't want to get too much of but watch for my blog. I've got one coming that I'm pretty sure Kevin will jump in on. It's called Hyper Collaboration. And it's going to be, you know, I started the info on it and I wanted to talk about it today. I think we've had some good discussion, but I'm just going to encourage all of you. You all have these CEO friends. You all have connections out there. For goodness sakes, find a way to work with them and start even small, even if it's just two of you. You know, I look at what they did in New Jersey. That's been a huge success. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to make all that work, but it's certainly paying off. And it's solidified the state of their organization. Yes. But we got to find a way to cross those chasms, that last mile. And if anybody asks me what the number one superpower of the credit union is, I always say collaboration. But I don't feel like we're doing a good job of getting together and sharing ideas. I love that. This is an example of that. But I want to see us execute a bit more. And I worry that the time maybe has already come and gone for a really good, artificial intelligence group that I know of none of in the country, that are working together with a whole bunch of credit unions who have research and development money to move forward on what proactive finance looks like. I've been, talking for a long time about autonomous banking. If we're going to have autonomous cars, there's no reason we shouldn't have autonomous banking. But we're not doing that. We're just sitting around waiting for either a fintech to figure it out or waiting around for someone else to, so we can implement it. And that's not who we used to be, as evidenced by the fact that, look, Carillion was one of the first home banking in the world, and it came out of First Tech. And oh, by the way, the other big one came out of Paul Fiore working at his credit union. Credit unions have traditionally been innovators and disruptors, but it seems like we've gotten away from that. And you know who I blame? Mike Lawson. That's right. his CU broadcast, just make it look easy, like anybody can do it. And clearly he's destroying
Sorry.
our industry. He's the enemy of the people, folks. And I just
Sorry.
want to state it right here for everyone to see. I'm kidding. He has nothing else. He's helping us. Mike, any last words?
I thought Gary's comment about kind of getting some sort of central idea and kind of rallying around that. I thought that's what we need to
Artificial
do right now.
intelligence.
Love that.
Figure out
That-
autonomous
that's what we
banking.
need.
Get a
And
group
somehow
together.
have-
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I only want, what do we need, Kevin? $9? All right. Well, thank you all for listening to my soapbox today, and appreciate it. I've got some exciting guests coming. I'm working with the NCUA. I'm hoping that they will approve me to have this guest on. I don't want to say who it is yet, but if he comes on, it's going to be really cool. And we're going to learn a lot about kind of the way they're thinking and how things are going. So, and some other, a bunch more lined up behind that. So, but today I just thought I'd come on here and rant, and I appreciate you listening.
We appreciate the rant.
Thank you, sir.
You're
All
welcome.
right, guys. Everyone have a great day. Give you a few minutes
Thanks,
back.
John. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Well done.